they were not fine in the West. In 2022, the Memphis Grizzlies won 56 games in the Western Conference and were the second seed. Ja Morant was All-NBA, an All-Star, and won Most Improved Player. Jaren Jackson Jr. was selected to be on the All-Defensive team. Desmond Bane was 18 points a game on 53% from three. Dillon Brooks was also 18 points a game and was the trash talker of the team. They would go on to make the second round of the playoffs where they would lose to the Golden State Warriors, and hey, no shame in that. The Warriors went on to win the championship. And despite the loss, things only looked to be on the up and up for Memphis. And the next year, they were the 2 seed again, this time winning 51 games. Ja was an All-Star again. Jaren Jackson Jr. was an All-Star and won the Defensive Player of the Year. And Dillon Brooks was even named to All-Defensive Team. But in March of 2023, the problems would start for Memphis. Ja Morant was suspended for 8 games. The suspension was due to Ja Morant's social media behavior, particularly him going online and waving a gun around. Now, there was debate about whether he should have actually been suspended for that, but the fact is he was suspended for 8 games. But that was only the start of the problems for the Memphis Grizzlies. As the playoffs drew near and Memphis had the prospect of playing the Los Angeles Lakers, Dillon Brooks decided to poke a bear, and that bear's name was LeBron James. And so it was, the Memphis Grizzlies versus the Los Angeles Lakers in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs with the added Dillon Brooks shenanigans to spice things up. And this was a series that went 6 games, but it wasn't that close. Memphis was put in their place. Ja Morant would take a lot of hard falls in this series, leading to him having to leave the game at moments. And a lot of these hard falls were just him trying to dunk over Anthony Davis and LeBron James, which did not pan out. Speaking of Anthony Davis, he made Jaren Jackson Jr. look very bad. The Defensive Player of the Year, Jaren Jackson Jr., was no match for AD in this series. And this series would be the last time Dillon Brooks would wear a Grizzlies jersey. Brooks would not play very good in this series, and after getting ejected from a game for hitting LeBron below the belt, in a call which might have been a little bit unfair, to be honest, especially considering what we saw Draymond Green do to Domantas Sabonis in that same first round. But nevertheless, Dillon Brooks would play bad, he'd get ejected, and this would lead to his departure from Memphis as the Grizzlies didn't really want him after this series. And that would lead to Dillon Brooks signing with the Houston Rockets, where Brooks would help turn that franchise around, kind of like how he helped build the culture in Memphis. He would do the same in Houston. Now, after this frankly embarrassing showing in the playoffs, the Grizzlies were out, obviously. So Ja Morant, left to his own devices, once again went on Instagram wielding a gun. This time, the NBA took much harder action against him, much more consequence for Ja Morant after the second time within a 3-month span that he would do this. He was suspended for 25 games to start the next season, and that was very detrimental to the Memphis Grizzlies. The 2023-24 season was not kind at all to Memphis. They were without their star to start the season, and were injury-riddled the entire year. 33 people suited up for the Memphis Grizzlies in the 2023-24 season due to the insane amount of injuries that occurred to the Grizzlies. And one of those players that would get injured was Ja Morant. After his 25-game suspension, he would come back for just 9 games before having a labrum injury. This would put him out for the rest of the season, and the Grizzlies would win just 23 games that year, leading to them being in the lottery, where they would draft Zach Edey, and then in the second round, they drafted Jalen Wells. Both were pretty good draft picks. You know, for the Grizzlies, that was something positive to come out of such a horrible off-the-rails season, is they got 2 good young players out of the draft. However, they were not rid of their problems. Though they started the next season off hot, I think they were the 2 seed again at one point. All was not well with Ja Morant. You see, he did not like the new offensive scheme that was introduced by the coaching staff because it did not involve him in nearly as many pick and rolls. And Ja Morant really didn't like that. So what did Memphis do? What did the coaching staff do? Well, they went back to Ja Morant's offensive scheme that he liked. They catered to Ja, and they fell off a cliff. And in the process of falling off that cliff, Memphis fired their head coach with like 3 weeks left in the season. So with longtime head coach Taylor Jenkins out of the picture, the Memphis Grizzlies brought in Tomas Isolo. I don't know if I'm saying that right at all. Actually, I know I'm not saying it right. Nevertheless, Jenkins was out, Isolo was in, and the Memphis Grizzlies were in the play-in. They would make it out, and in the first round, the 8-seed Grizzlies would take on the 1-seed Oklahoma City Thunder in a series where they got utterly demolished. Memphis was way out of their depth playing against OKC. In fact, it was a sweep. They got swept. Ja Morant was hurt in Game 3, where the Grizzlies actually looked like they could win a game. They were up 20, and then Ja Morant went down with injury, and then the Grizzlies lost. Now, there's truly no shame in losing to OKC. They went on to be the champions, but just how bad Memphis lost was the embarrassing part. Then in the offseason, they would trade Desmond Bane, a key player, to the Grizzlies. They traded him to the Orlando Magic for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and 5 first-round picks, which, in my opinion, Memphis fleeced Orlando. 5 first-round picks for Desmond Bane? What? So while Orlando traded for a player who disappointed their expectations for another player who's disappointing their expectations, Memphis looked to get back in title contention. But so far, the season has been a disaster. The Grizzlies are currently 3-5, and it is trouble with no paradise for Memphis, as Ja Morant is once again beefing with the head coach. And with a new coach, it's the same problem for Ja Morant. He does not like the offense. He doesn't like the rotations. He doesn't like how the game isn't being catered to him. And this boiled over in a very embarrassing showing for Ja Morant, where he had a terrible performance against the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Cup. And this led to Coach Isolo calling out Ja Morant's leadership ability in front of the whole locker room. And the Grizzlies felt that Ja Morant's response to Coach Isola's challenge of Morant's leadership ability was dismissive and detrimental to the team. And so they suspended him for 1 game, and the Grizzlies would lose that game. And the Grizzlies lost their last game against Detroit. They were 3-2, now they're 3-5. Now this has begun a discussion about Ja Morant being traded, because it seems like him and Memphis are heading down that road. The Grizzlies have constantly catered to Ja Morant. The coaching staff has catered to him, and he hasn't liked it. Whether it was Taylor Jenkins or Tomas Isolo, Morant doesn't like the offense, and whether they cater it to him or not, it seems like there's problems one way or the other, whether it's Morant feeling like he's not getting the ball as much as he wants, or whether it's him getting the ball and they start losing a lot. Memphis can't seem to figure out how to please Ja Morant and win. In addition to that, Ja Morant is an injury-prone player with off-the-court problems. He has been a constant headache for the Grizzlies ever since that initial suspension in March of 2023. Now, the Grizzlies' problems are not solely on Ja Morant, but he is the superstar, or at least was the superstar, as it seemed like Ja Morant has regressed from that initial 2022 season where the Grizzlies won 56 games. Morant was All-NBA that season, but hasn't been since 2022. And he hasn't been an all-star since 2023. His game has not shown improvement, if anything. He has only gotten worse with his off-the-court problems. Now, again, the team's problems are not solely on Ja Morant. They have been horribly injury-riddled the last few seasons, and they can't seem to avoid it. They have tried to do the best with what they've been given, and that has led to people like Scottie Pippen Jr. and Gigi Jackson having some great moments for the Grizzlies over the last 2 seasons. But the fact is, at one point in time, with Ja Morant in his prime, with Jaren Jackson Jr., with Dylan Brooks, with Desmond Bane and Steven Adams, that team was a contending team. 2 seed, back-to-back years, 50-plus wins, back-to-back years. But those days are behind Memphis, and maybe it's time they trade Ja Morant, or even Jaren Jackson Jr., but they need a fresh coat of paint. They need to make a change to this team. I personally think they should rebuild. They need to tank at this point. They've got those 5 first-round picks from Orlando. And with the way Orlando's playing, those picks could be pretty valuable as well. You get a couple of lottery picks. I don't think Orlando will be that bad, but there's a chance. You get a couple of lottery picks, and you could turn this franchise around from being stuck in the mud to back in, being a serious organization within the next 1 or 2 seasons.